Welcome. My name is Jill Tejan. I'm Vice President of the Board of Directors of the National Women's Hall of Fame. And induction, every time it's held, is such a wonderful and inspiring and motivational event. So I'm delighted to be here in Seneca Falls, New York, the birthplace of women's rights and the home of the National Women's Hall of Fame.
Our fourth inductee is Anna Jacobson Swartz. Born and raised in New York City, Anna Jacobson became interested in economics while attending Walton High School. At the age of 18, she graduated from Barnard College and went on to earn her master's degree in economics from Columbia in 1935 at the age of 19. In 1936, she married Isaac Swartz and began her professional career with Columbia University's Social Science Research Council, earning her PhD in 1964. Dr. Schwartz's first published paper in 1940, British Share Prices 1811 to 1850, was a precursor to much of her subsequent work, meticulous in the presentation, explanation, and interpretation of data. In 1941, she began a more than 70-year tenure working with the National Bureau of Economic Research. It was during this time that she then began working with economist Milton Friedman. Together, they co-authored A Monetary History of the United States, 1967 through 1960. The massive study demonstrated that changes in monetary policy have large effects on the economy and blamed a large portion of the Great Depression on the Federal Reserve. It is one of the most widely cited texts in economics today. Considered a leading financial historian and expert on monetary statistics in the U.S. and Britain, her work demonstrated the importance of the behavior of the money supply and the importance of the behavior of being stable and predictable, forever changing the entire approach to economic policy making. For her, pioneering work as a female research economist, having been described as one of the world's greatest monetary scholars, Anna Jacobson Swartz is now inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. Accepting for her today is Dr. Michael Bordeaux, Professor of Economics and Director of the Center for Monetary and Financial History at Rutgers University in New Brunswick, New Jersey.
Now we're going to get into the arcane world of economics, and we've all taken Econ 101. You can put your heads down. It's a great honor to accept this award for Anna Swartz, who I knew as a colleague and a friend for over 4 decades. She would have been really thrilled to be here, and unfortunately she died last year. Now, Anna Jacobson Swartz was among the great economists of the 20th century. She was a pioneer in monetary economics, monetary statistics, and monetary history. She was also one of the few women who made an indelible mark in the mid-20th century in a largely male-dominated discipline. Early in her career, she had to overcome significant barriers to receiving her PhD, and she made her many contributions without having an academic position. Her long career has been an inspiration for many women economists who today are at the forefront of the economics profession. Now, Anna's career began in the 1940s when she started doing research at the National Bureau of Economic Research, known to everybody that's involved with it, the NWHF, in New York City. She collaborated with Milton Friedman in writing A Monetary History of the United States, 1867 to 1960, which was published in 1963. This book is considered one of the most important and influential books in economics in the 20th century. The most memorable chapter in that book was their analysis of the Great Contraction from 1929 to 1933, which they attributed to a failure by the Federal Reserve to prevent a series of devastating banking panics that reduced the money supply and reduced spending and brought the United States economy to its knees. Ben Bernanke, the current chairman of the Federal Reserve, learned several lessons from Anna and Milton that may have prevented the recent Great Contraction from turning into another repeat of the 1930s slump. In fact, Bernanke stated in 2002 the following. He said to Anna and to Milton at a big conference at the University of Chicago, he said, "I would like to say to Milton and Anna, regarding the Great Depression, you're right, we did it. We're very sorry, we won't do it again." And Anna also wrote 2 other path-breaking books in economics with Friedman, as well as her first book, which was written when she was in her 20s, with Arthur Gayer and Walt Rostow, who used to be an advisor to the President Johnson. And that book was called Growth and Fluctuations of the British Economy, 1790 to 1850. Anna published in her lifetime and over her really long career many other seminal articles, both by herself and with others. She contributed greatly to public policy when she chaired the U.S. Gold Commission in 1982, and that topic of gold keeps coming back and back and back again. And she's contributed to the monetary policy debate by being a member of the Shadow Open Market Committee, which sort of tracks the Fed. Now, I first met Anna in 1970 when I was a visiting research associate at the NWHF. I was a graduate student at the University of Chicago, and I worked under Millett Friedman, and I was working in monetary history, and I wanted to get to meet Anna because I knew that she was the font of all the data in monetary history. So she was my mentor ever since then, and we had an incredible collaboration. And working with Anna was both hard work and exhilarating. She had extremely high standards in her scholarship, and she kept me on her toes. She was an excellent economist. She reasoned through every argument carefully. She was a stickler for finding, processing, checking, and using the best data. Indeed, much of her research effort was involved in, I quote, getting the data, which was coming from the true NWHF tradition that she grew up in. So what I remember most about Anna is how much she loved her work. Her whole life was organized around going to the office. She officially retired from the NWHF when she was 65, but she didn't stop working until she was 94. She went into the bureau every day when she was in her 80s and 90s, and she still put in a full 8-hour day. And she just didn't stop. She loved being involved in economic research and in the policy game. It was her passion. It drove her, even in her later years. Without that extreme intellectual vitality, I don't think she would have lived that long. Now, Anna was a top-flight economist and a hard worker, but she was a balanced person. She had a great family, Isaac, a caring husband with a terrific sense of humor, who died in 1999, 4 children, Naomi, who was here, Jonathan, Paula, and Joel, many grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And they all used to come to New York to see her very often. She had season tickets to the Metropolitan Opera, which she loved. She rarely missed a performance. She was an active person in other dimensions as well. She always had a few novels going, and she especially liked Anthony Trollope. She was on top of what was going on in politics and economic policy everywhere in the world. She was continuously consulted by policymakers from everywhere, by scholars, and she was frequently talked to by the press. She read the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times each day, picking up every little detail Anna never missed a beat. I miss Anna.
We're going to get my card. And thank you so much. You're doing an amazing job. I'd love to get this and just pick up that everything. Thank you. It's quite a feat to be able to get all this set up and transacting.
It's a wonderful event. We're excited to do it every time. So
You're amazing. To have set up a gift shop, that's amazing.
okay, there's that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Millett. Born and raised in St. Paul, Minnesota, Kate Millett studied English literature at the University of Minnesota and St. Hilda's College, Oxford University. In 1970, she received her PhD in comparative literature from Columbia. Her academic career began as an English instructor at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro, and has included several teaching positions over the years at home and abroad. As a political activist, Dr. Millett's first significant contribution came in 1966, when she was named as the first chair of the Education Committee of the newly formed National Organization for Women, NOW. In 1968, she authored a pioneering report published by NOW, Token Learning, a study of women's higher education in America, in which she challenged women's colleges to provide educational opportunities for women equal to those being provided to men. 2 years later, in 1970, Dr. Millett authored Sexual Politics, a landmark work in feminist theory that fueled the second wave of the women's movement in the U.S. Since then, she has authored numerous articles and essays and 10 additional books. In 1971, she formed Women's Liberation Cinema, producing feminist classic 3 Lives. Between 1963 and 2009, she had several international solo art exhibitions and installations in sculpture, drawing, serigraphs, and photography. Dr. Millett founded the Millett Center for Arts in 1978 on her own 10-acre farm in LaGrange, New York. The center provides artists in residence, accommodations, and studio facilities to women artists from all around the world. For your influence, contributions to the feminist movement, and for your contributions as a writer, artist, filmmaker, and teacher and human rights advocate,
Kate Millett, you are inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame.
I want to thank the National Women's Hall of Fame for this great honor. I'm here today representing the many comrades in the fight for women's equality, to which we've become known as the second wave of feminism in America, otherwise known as women's liberation. I also want to acknowledge my family who are here with me today in great number. My sister, Sally Rao, a lawyer, my nieces, Kate Rao and Judge Lisa Rao, my nephews, David Rao and Judge Stephen Rao, and my partner in all things, Sophie Kier. I'm proud to share this day with them. Like many of my age group, I have lived my life in the checkered sunshine of the empowering ideal of feminism or women's liberation. Early on, I analyzed society in terms of sexual politics, the paradigm of male supremacy under which we have lived so long and thoughtlessly. An activist, I've also lived through the women's movement itself. A fact of it, living within that historical wave, experiencing history with such force, such circumstances, it has changed everything. It gave me friends around the world, most particularly in France and Italy, in Iran and Turkey. We were in the transformative feeling of that period, sisters in every country, and mentors like de Beauvoir. My association with the French women of Défense goes back almost 40 years. Together at the time of the Iranian Revolution in 1979, we met with Iranian women in Tehran, trying to establish a movement which government repression forced underground, here and there. The happiness of those times, the joy of participation, the excitement of being part of my own time, of living on the edge, of being so close to events you can almost intuit them. To raise one's voice in protest, just as the protest is expressed in life, in the streets, in relationships and friendships. Then in a moment of public recognition, the face of the individual becomes a woman's face. Until now, part of the quotidian, not an exception, but part of the ordinary, women become the human condition. The voice of struggle and protest becomes our voice. The logic of justice becomes our own earnest argument, sweet and reasonable, or shrill and irreversible and irresistible, but still bringing fairness and equity to the contest. We took the whole of life for our care now. We began to eye the offices of patriarchy, the rewards of money, and become doctors, judges, lawyers, geologists, sports figures, and politicians, artists and diplomats, professors and farmers. We now regard a single standard of human behavior as normative. No more double standard. We became full human beings. Not that part related to men that we had heretofore, somebody's mother, somebody's wife. We imagine our full humanity now is not as bestowed as youth or beauty or on cooperative comportment. Our full humanity, a huge demand. We had always been permitted human dignity on a case-by-case basis. A mother here, a daughter there, a wife treasured or obedient, no more. We were open, and we demanded human consideration. More than half the human race. The fact that it took until the conference of Vienna in the 1990s for us to declare human rights were women rights, and women rights were human rights. Not all that entirely either. We're still routinely beaten and tormented. Mistreatment is routine and excused as religious or cultural. Collectively, we own only a fraction of the Earth's surface, enjoy only a minority of its goods and services, including its food, and comprise with our children the world's poor. And the highest percentage of HIV, AIDS infections and deaths. Also, malaria and polio. Women's resistance to oppression is the cutting edge of international human rights activities. But it is as if the project of women's liberation is becoming a little bit harder as time goes by, as shadows of conservatism pass over the world now. And there is war. America is absorbed in an endless war. No shape or conclusion. It goes on and on. There is fundamentalism of the religious right, Christian and Muslim hatreds, male chauvinism, and hatred of the very idea of women's liberation by a new and more determined masculinity. We are undergoing, if not a gender war, a gender attack, an assault on women from all sides. On our newly won human rights, our newly claimed humanity, without being killed, we are being destroyed. Removed from the ranks of the fully human, we are the victims of genocide. It doesn't need to kill us. It annihilates us. Inequality on the basis of sex is a pervasive reality in women's lives all over the world. So is sex-related violence, in rape, confinement and torture, trafficking, genital mutilation, and domestic violence. This violence is either considered too extraordinary to be believed or too ordinary to constitute human rights violations. If it's happening, it's really not so bad. If it's really not so bad, it's not happening. Well, what this means is that women have not yet become fully human in the legal and political sense, bearers of equally enforceable human rights. The world is in the throes of such an assault upon women now, even as we become invisible, as night after night television news contains screams, crowds of men in demonstrations, no women. Man's face filled the entire space, There are no women anywhere in sight. In certain countries, as if there are no women now at all. They have ceased to register. They have all been erased from public presence. They've been silenced, removed from the ranks of the few fully human. Women's political identity is disappearing. Less here, but everywhere, and everywhere more than here. Everything we have fought for and won has lost many times now. I have fought the patriarchy all my life, as a scholar, as a teacher, as a token woman, and as an artist. Was there ever a time? Not in the late days of Latin dictatorships, Laotian killing fields, CIA assassins, of Contras, contractors, drones, and mafia. The United States of America has been at war almost all my adult life. We are now in a permanent state of war, and the unseen voiceless casualties of war are women and children, so-called collateral damage. I'm the daughter of a feminist, a niece of two others. That first generation of American women born to vote. We carry a wonderful burden of history. The United States of America has developed two additions to civil society: the idea of civil rights and the idea of feminism or women's liberation. I'm proud to be part of it all. Civil rights, anti-apartheid, the struggle of women all over the world, and gays and lesbians in gay liberation. The struggle of the whole against the might of the young and affluent, the peacemakers against the violence, and in the understanding that freedom is indivisible and must always be defended, always.